a lot of support. Obviously, the lawsuit that caught not, but they also need to collect a lot of cases, the victim cases. So definitely, support student for fair admission. Go to the website and sign in if you can, and sign in as a member. And also send in a student if you know somebody that was rejected in the Harvard, those universities that because of this problem. So what I want to introduce now for the next speech is Professor Hu. And he has been very active on this issue too, from his organization 8020, and actually Professor Wu has been working with Mr. Blum and Constable in the past in the case of Fisher University, Texas, as well as the Harvard University. So it's, and he himself is also a professor at UC Berkeley, is well familiar with kind of what's going on inside of UC system on admission, and he's also very familiar with the topic SCA5 that we actually have last year. Right, let me pass it.
Thank you, Robin. Good afternoon. You know, from your reaction to the comments by Ed and Will, I can see that you're really here to support this cause, and I applaud you for doing that. So I don't think I need to tell you more about the merit of the action that you are supporting Ed and Will to carry out. But I tell you, 8020 for a long time, I would say, was the lone voice within the Asian American community to cry out for the injustice in the elite college admission case. I know many of you have read SB's email over the years, and our experience when we approach other Asian American communities, now I'm not talking about the SBCA, I'm talking about the more established, large Asian American communities, we did not and still do not, although things are changing, thanks for the good work, example you're setting, and the publicity that Ed and Will have been getting, we don't get this positive reaction. Instead, it's the opposite. And Ed and Will can tell you that in their lawsuits, the Asian American communities have been almost unanimously stood on the other side, fighting the amicus brief, that is the a recommendation to the court against this action, Asian American communities. So 8020 was very happy to file amicus brief for the cause that Ed and Will were trying to fight for in the Abigail, in the Fisher versus the UT case. And I could not help but making this observation. I think it's not a coincidence that when I spoke to these other Asian American organizations, I see the leadership all at an age where they don't no longer have children that will be hurt by this discriminative practices in the elite colleges. Whereas in this audience, I see you have your children to think about. So there's something wrong and hypocritic, but it is also understandable. Everyone wants to feel they are being generous and unselfish. And I can tell you, and in fact trying to save the world. And I can tell you, professors are probably among the most liberal and the most desiring to feel good about what they are doing. Not only the professors, I can speak, I believe, any people associated with the university, administrators, the board of regents, and they all want to feel good. They think they are leading the way, setting the right example. Unfortunately, So one important thing to take from this is that unlike perhaps in many of the police stations around the country, there really is no discrimination against the minorities. I can assure you of that. Even when there's a law, such as the Proposition 209, which is in the result is addition to the California state constitution, even when this law says we cannot consider race in admission, it's open secret. It's considered at every turn. And there are former admission officers that publish articles on web saying how she was taught to consider race while not considering race. There are just infinite ways you can do that, as you can imagine. And that's why Richard Sanders, professor of law at UCLA, who spoke to this group about 6 months ago, right? And he had to file a lawsuit against his own university to try to get some additional data to convince the world of his conclusion that the university was violating the law by considering race. So there's no discrimination and no danger of discrimination against minorities. The danger is the other direction. That is, the other injured parties are not going to be considered. And I'll tell you, remind you who those are. One, of course, are those Asian and white students that are not admitted. Well, in the public announced policies, they should have been admitted. Those are obviously injured parties. This practice actually also injures the minority community. I can tell you why. University is also a business. Business not only in terms of getting tuition, that's minor now, given all the government subsidies and student loans. That's not much of an issue. The issue is that universities are so protective of its reputation. It does want to get qualified students, but it also wants to look good and show the world that they take care of the minorities. As a result, they cherry pick the minorities, and turns out in these elite colleges, studies show 86% of the black students come from the upper and higher economic group of the black population. And this defeats the purpose of, I think, many of the professors and others who want to feel good that we're doing good things for the world. I believe we all want to help the underprivileged, those that otherwise will be stuck in the bottom of the social class. We want to give them a chance, give them the mobility to come up. I believe that's what we want to do. And maybe that is why my colleagues and counterparts in other Asian American communities, leadership circle, do not want to come out to support your cause. Because they think we will be taking the chance from those. But in reality, the university, by allowing them to consider racial, they do not achieve that goal of taking care of underprivileged kids. Instead, let me give you an example how this can be accomplished. Rather surprisingly, when you don't consider race, this is accomplished. And I'm so sorry that Mr. Conley could not be here. If he's here, I think I'll apologize to him. When he was the regent and really led the campaign to pass the Proposition 209, I was a professor then, of course, also. I, like many of my colleagues, actually distributed flyers and talked to our neighbors, asked them to vote against it. Because we really thought that's going to do something bad for the underprivileged student. But in reality, after Proposition 69 passed, what happened is that the African American students' graduation number have increased. Their admission numbers did decrease a little, not much, but their graduation number increased continuously over the years. And the reason is that before Proposition 209, the graduation rate of African American students was less than 13%. Now it's over 60%. So what happened? When you don't allow the university to take the easy way out, to just paper war the dark side, then we try harder. We look at the selection harder. We don't go for the easy target. We don't go for just from the rich black kids. We look for the kids that really show the potential. That's what happened. And the other thing is, with this race being legally forbidden to be considered in UC's admission, you know, UC system has more poor kids in it than anywhere else. I'll give you some numbers. Now, universities like to use this definition for poor kids because federal government has a large scholarship program called Pell Grants, P-E-L-L, Pell Grants. It's totally based on family income. So if you qualify for Pell Grants, then your family income will be, you know, below or not much above the poverty level, say 40,000, 50,000 a year. UC Berkeley alone has more, this is 2009 statistics, has more Pell Grants students than all the Ivy Leagues added together. UC Davis alone has more Pell Grant students than all the Ivy League schools added together. UCLA has more Pell Grant students than all the Ivy League schools added together. So if you want to help the underprivileged, take away the easy way out, and Ed's concern is also mine, that the Supreme Court at this point still leave this way out, say, yeah, you can apply race, just apply this gingerly. What does this mean, carefully? What does this mean, the close scrutiny? What does that mean? It just means there are still 10,000 ways you can not do the right thing, but rather the easier thing to do. So there are better ways, and I was talking about the victims. I think I should really mention this. There's this problem called the mismatch, academic mismatch. So another victim, besides the students that are denied admission that should be admitted, besides the fact that the more deserving underprivileged applicants from the minority community are not selected, the fact is that those that are selected often don't achieve their aspirations. They are taken into the top universities, law school, engineering school, medical school, but then they fail and they transfer to something they did not want to study. They could have been very good lawyers and the doctors and engineers if they did not go to the school that took them because the school wanted to look good. If they let the student, if the school let the students find the right place for them, they would have done better. And there are multiple studies that show that this mismatch is a problem. And finally, speaking of the victim, the society is the victim. We have already a problem in losing our high school education quality to the rest of the world. You know, it looks horrible. Anytime you look at high school students of math, science, and skills, it's already horrible. And we also know that the world economy is more going to be based on knowledge-based. We cannot tolerate this mismatch of the students' desires, their abilities, and the opportunities. So by taking away the racial consideration in university admission, we really are going to take away the unfairness that many applicants face. We're going to take away the mismatch that cost the beneficiary, supposed beneficiary, their dreams. And we're going to save the nation from further decay, unfortunately, in the competition in economic growth in the world. So I think what you're doing here, supporting this, is really well done, and I hope you will sign up as a member of this organization, donate what you can. I hope you also support 8020. 8020 is a watchdog for any inequalities that Asian Americans face, not just in school admission. We championed the inequity in the appointment of federal judges, and we induced President Obama, when he was a candidate, was seeking to win the primary in California against Hillary Clinton. So we support him strongly, and he signed a pledge to increase the representation of Asian American federal judges. And after he was elected, I can tell you, in this 6 years, the Asian American federal judges have more than doubled, but still only half in terms of percentage compared to the Asian Americans as percentage in the nation. But in that case, as well as in the college admissions case, as well as another case 8020 is fighting, and we believe battleground probably is going to be in the Silicon Valley, that is the glass ceiling of the employees of private enterprise, not to mention the employees in the university and employees in the government, if you can believe that. There's clear evidence that there is a glass ceiling in all these three segments. So these are the work that's going still have to be done, and so we hope that you all join 8020 and support the protection of yourself and your children for years to come. Thank you.
There was a great speech from Professor Hu. I think he gave a very good angle that the kind of the people to try to use this excuse to support underrepresented minority and actually work against the cause of, this principle, basically that the student might turn out, high failure or failure rate on graduation, and then actually create a problem than just a resolve problem. So a lot of people know that in the last years that when the SAA 5 came out, it was, I think a lot of people here have done the work to basically to reverse it. And when it came out, and the people think this is the mountain that we go against, because the people who supported up in the Sacramento, they possess the supermajority. But with the grassroots organization and all the action from the people on the ground here in the Silicon Valley, and so that state amendment constitution was basically that not passing the legislation. That's because of all the hard work from every angle, from every layer. So now we know that the Ed and Will, they have the professor who they have worked on the court side and lawsuit side, and also they work on the kind of grassroots side that Mr. Zhao is leading, and basically that he's leading the effort of this filing administrative complaint against University of Harvard at Department of Education. And I wanted him to kind of give an introduction of this action and then the things around it. Right? Welcome, Mr. Zhao.
Thank you. For those who don't know me, I give a little bit of background. I'm a Chinese American author. I was the one who first published the column in the American English medium to support the Chinese American protest of Jimmy Kimmel show on killing all Chinese. That was back about 1.5 years ago. And when California introduced SAF-5, I was the first one public articles in the World Journal to mobilize Asian American. I live in Orlando, but I care about Asian American interests, care about the Chinese American interests. I want to touch 2 points. The first, I want to say unity is the power. After we filed these complaints, and then we got overwhelmed news coverage. Starting from Associated Press and Bloomberg, NBC, CNN, Fox News, you name it. Every organization's news coverage covered us. Myself, Professor Li Chunye, we were too busy to address all the requests from news media. This week, I still get to see a lot of editorial, compassionate, supportive editorial, support our cause. There's more than one news reporter asked me, why didn't you speak out earlier, a few years earlier? What does it mean? We have been so silent. We too much care about family, care about work. We don't care about, as a racial group, we should fight for our equal rights. So, for this reason, I encourage everybody join what Mr. Blum and Will they lead this effort. I also welcome all of you. If there's an organization, we're still open for the complaint. We will put an amendment. File 3 months later. We also have individual petition is going to be launched very soon. But from this, this movement, let me give you a background on this. So when Mr. Blum was asking for the victim, plaintiff, on the April the 20th, I saw 8020 organization, Dr. Wu, send a WeChat, and then I immediately, and I gave a speech here for another event about my book, and I call for victims, students, join Mr. Blum's course. And a few months later, I was able to identify Michael Wang, who filed individual complaint against Yale and Princeton. So, I tried to send it to Mr. Blum, and then they had a discussion. But I was thinking about one thing. Every time, when our Asian American individual victim, file in the complaints, we don't have a lot of organization. That time only probably 80-20 to stand behind them to give the resources, give the moral support. So that's what's missing. So we discussed, we teamed up with Professor Li Chunye and a few Alex Chen from TOC, the Orange Club, and a few other student organization leaders. And later on we have Alex Chen from this organization, Henry Yang joined us. When we saw Mr. Blum's lawsuit was filed, there's some articles criticize the lawsuit. Some from Asian American writers, some from NPR claiming they are not representing Asian Americans. So, my sense is something missing. as the most victimized this kind of racially based policy, we are so silent. The good thing is, anti-SCI5 movement get a lot of people, not only in California. California is a major battlefield, okay? But a lot of Chinese Americans, Asian Americans mobilized. We have a lot of grassroots movement. So I saw that is an opportunity. So we have a need to speak up. We have the organization preparation. So we decided we launch this. Thanks for very good work by Will, and also I personally studied a bunch of things on the history. So we put together a campaign. We get the Asian American Legal Foundation reviewed, and then we mobilized. We use WeChat. We reach out to so many organizations. I want to give you a few feedback. One Pakistani organization, when he received the like a request for complaint, he was saying, "This has been due for a long time. We really appreciate your courage." There's far away in Hong Kong, there's a foundation. We did not include their name because they are not really Asian American. They sent us a word. They said from their ancestors, they believe anything good for today, you should do it. If it's good for your future, you must do it. So we got a lot of support. So we were able to reach out not only Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, and also Pakistani Americans, Korean Americans. So that is the moment the media, the society is waiting for. So we filed a complaint. We also get support from the U.S. House. 3 House representatives received us. First started with Grace Meng, who is a Democratic congressman, Asian American. And the second is Virginia Fox. She is in charge of House Higher Education Committee. And also Dana Rebecca, the day before we have a news conference, he also received our delegation, and he personally attended our news conference. Right now, and also later on, Mr. Jiang Klan, who is the House Committee Chair on Health Education and Labor Force, he let Ms. Annie Jones, who is the Policy Director for the House Education Policy, listen to our briefing, understand the case, our complaint. Right now, there's things going on is Congressman Dana Rebecca and also Congressman Ed Joyce. They jointly writing a letter to provide congressional and national support to our cause. So we're getting good, publicity, good support. That's my first topic. The second topic I want to mention, as Ed clearly pointed out, many times also studied by Mr. Daniel Gordon, says Ivy Leagues use a lot of stereotypes to label Asian Americans, only know the test, not creative, not don't have leadership, don't have the risk-taking. Myself, my team, we did a bit of study. We already have 6% of the population. In 1992, only 3%. A couple decades ago, only 1% was Asian American. We have 12 Nobel Prize winners. MIT in the last year issued 35 innovated who are under age of 35. Asian American take up 40%. And in the 2006 to 2012, 42% of technology startup were funded, at least participated by Asian Americans. Think about that. Every one of them need leadership. Every one of them need creativity. Every one of them need risk-taking. Even a Chinese restaurant owner, that's leadership, that's risk-taking, right? So the society have a lot of bad, stereotype put